Hello and welcome to Crafting Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman and I'm your host. Every Wednesday and Friday, I bring you interviews of female and non-binary makers of all kinds from all over the world. Today's guests are Heather and Brittany of Beautiful Fight Woodworking. They are an amazing couple, and I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity to chat with them and learn about their journey into woodworking, into now having a brick and mortar store and running classes and all the great things that they do and the things that they have to encounter almost on a daily basis as part of that work. So thank you so much to them for chatting with me, and I know you're going to enjoy this interview. Before we hop into it though, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the Revolution Pod Squad over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin Lefty's Woodshop, Christy Twisted Twine, Jeremy Spees, Sammy Go Sammy Lee, Rachel Moody Makes, Bonnie Toolmom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura Oakley Soap Company, Brandy Studio Obey, Lee the Rainbow Carver, Ellen Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued and ongoing support, helping me to produce 2 episodes a week every week. And with no further ado, here is Brittany and Heather of Beautiful Fight Woodworking. I think you both know that I always like to start by having my guests introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
Gladly. My name is Brittany and
I'm Heather.
Hello. And who do you form together?
So together we make Beautiful Fight Woodworking.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask how did that name come to be?
I had a battle with a really rare blood cancer that formed in my spine. And at that time, I kind of used the phrase, this was my beautiful fight. Cancer fight is always referred to as a fight. And I wanted there to be some beauty in that extreme darkness. So whenever we started woodworking and we're looking for a business name, it was just so fitting because even starting our business and even now there are days that are a struggle and a fight. So it's still just kind of a beautiful fit, I think.
Awesome. So I gotta know what's the story? Where'd you guys, I guess we'll start individually. Where'd you grow up? And then how did you end up? I have to know the meetup story and then, and then get into woodworking.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm actually from the Lake of the Ozarks. So K through 12, I went to Camdenton, and then I went to college in St. Louis. Left St. Louis, came to Springfield, and I started working for the park board here and just made, I guess, a mutual friend because you really grew up with him. And we all went to a party and we met.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm from Stratford, a really small town right outside of Springfield, Missouri. I went up to Kansas City area for college, and we both have our degrees in absolutely not woodworking or business. I have my degree in psychology and sociology, and Heather has hers in criminology and sociology, so for psychology. So definitely not the path we were expecting, but yeah, I moved back to the Springfield area, and I was working with behavioral needs with adults, and then started working with individuals with autism and specifically some kids here. And then, because I had my battle with cancer my last semester of my senior year of college. So I had made a lot of progress back and got a lot of mobility back in my body. And so I was, doing that. And then we met and got together. And a few years later, we went on a vacation and had what was a crazy car accident just in general, but everybody's body responded pretty well. Mine did not.
She said crazy. There was like 32 cars involved. It was
we were on the highway
in Nashville. It was crazy.
So but luckily no one was seriously injured except for just myself, just my spine. I'm missing a huge chunk of it right in the middle, so it doesn't compress the same as everyone else's. So then I had a lot of regression and the physical limitations kind of came back into play. And I lost my job working in that field. And then woodworking really
We needed the money. She needed an outlet so she wasn't sad all the time.
Well, and it wasn't, at the beginning, it wasn't intentional, you know, like we needed to make money, so we were flipping a lot of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, just picking up free stuff or leftover stuff at yard sales, you know, just the basic flips. And then so she saw a couple of pallet signs, and I love to create. That is just therapy for me, you know. And I was like, you know, if we had a saw, we could cut those ourselves and save a lot of money versus buying a sign and then painting it on there. And that has somehow
skyrocketed.
So,
it was into what it is now.
yeah, very unintentional nerdy at first, but it's been awesome.
Well, first, I guess, you know, I just need to acknowledge the fact that you guys are in Missouri or Missouri, and I'm in Iowa.
Oh, no.
I think you pronounced misery wrong. Here.
Yeah. Well, I will say I grew up pronouncing it misery, and then lived in Southern California for a while, and our next door neighbor was from Missouri, and she pronounced it Missouri. Now, granted, she was from rural, and you know, a bit up there in age, so you know, some of that all played into it. But yeah,
Sure.
I never told her my full-on thoughts of misery. And I won't say them here either. But okay, so I mean, I guess it's interesting to me that you guys, you know, you talked about you got started with the flips and stuff because needing money. I mean, knowing where I'm at now in my business, I'm like, and have not made any money. I'm just curious, like how do you like, it was enough to help keep you guys going, obviously, to get going. But was that like a struggle too? Because even if you get the furniture for free to flip, like you still have to have all the like the materials and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I still worked full time at the time. I worked up until 2017 full time.
So we sold our first sign in October 2015. So there was a few years.
So there's a couple years.
Okay.
But I think, well, one, I have to say my dad came in, I mean, he still comes in and saves our butts.
He comes in clutch all the time.
But, you know, he gave me the drill that he had before I was born. Like we were able to get a couple of basic tools like that from my dad. And then our startup cost really was just the saw. And I already had a ton of paint supplies and paint brushes and all that kind of stuff just from painting. So we got kind of lucky that the way we started so small and we already had a lot of those materials that really helped with the cost of it. But it grew very, very slowly. Like it was a very intentional looking at budget. Like, okay, we sold 2 signs, so now we can go buy, so we could buy 6 or 7 boards. What could we make with just 6 or 7 boards? Because that's all we could afford. Okay, we could maybe make a coffee table and then like that. So it just kind of, we let it build off of itself kind of slowly while still flipping stuff and while Heather was still working full time. So it was very much a hustle. I mean, it still is now, but I mean, you know how it is. But at the beginning, especially, just trying to get some type of momentum building up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say in January 2022 will make 5 years for Freeman Furnishings, and that is still like,
congratulations.
Thanks. But that's still, it's more like the payment is still like all in mental health, if that makes sense. Like, yes, I bring money in, but it's basically enough to like cover expenses.
Exactly.
You know, but it's more like, but if I didn't do it, I'd be a pretty awful human being to be around most of the time. So like,
honestly, that's kind of where we are too, and we're going into year 6, 7. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I think building slow was a lot of it, and we had like a lot of big success recently over the past couple of years.
but the pandemic has really knocked us off our feet and really humbled us really quickly, I think, and taken us back to those, making sure we get every drop of paint out of the can and we save every scrap board, very, I guess intentional is the word I keep running back to. But it's even now, I mean, our costs are so much more expensive from having a retail store and a shop that we work in versus when we were in our house. The expense side has been, I think, one of the bigger struggles for me, because when we were just working in our house with most of our supplies, that expense wasn't too crazy high. And we could really just go off of, this is what the cost of a project is times 2.5 or 3, and we knew we would make profit. But then so much throughout this past year has there's been so much adapting to where that really simple math doesn't work as well. I mean, the price of lumber skyrocketing for a while, shipping issues, things like that. So I think from the outside, sometimes I think our journey looks easier than it was when we really had a lot of 100-hour work weeks and no social life, and everything we did, we
She said that like it's not the case now.
I mean, we're fostering now, so it's slowed down a little bit, but it's definitely still a lot. But I mean, we were working 12 to 14 hours in the shop, then all like the admin and paperwork and all of that stuff. So I think sometimes it looks like, which it is a beautiful journey, and I don't want to take away from that, but it looks like when you just look at our story that we started, it exploded, we got big, and it's really awesome and profitable. That's not always the case. We took a ton of losses this year. I mean, there was several projects where by the time we got them to the customer, we lost $100, but that's where we had to play into that mental aspect that you're talking about, where it's so much more than just a job, and it's so much more than just income. Like, the time that it provides for us to spend together, the time that it allows us to take off and have very focused time with family. And then for me, I mean, I'm the more emotional one, if you haven't gathered that yet. So I need purpose and to feel like I'm doing something, and I need to create. So the times where it's not profitable in the finances is able to come back and be profitable, like you're saying, in the mental health aspect. Which sometimes, a lot of times, is more important than the financial aspect of it.
Yeah, I would say COVID. I mean, it definitely depends on what market you're in, but I think COVID killed a lot for a lot of this industry.
Yes.
On one side, and then on the other side, I did have people like who maybe wouldn't before, reach out and be like, because they want to support artists during this time. And so they'd be like, okay, I want something of yours, that maybe they wouldn't have done that beforehand.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that, but like, especially as somebody who also creates content, like content took a huge nosedive. If nobody's driving to work, nobody is listening to a podcast. I can tell you that. Right. And so it's like all of that stuff. But you can't stop doing the work. You still have to do the work for when everything kind of comes back. Did I hear in there? I guess I didn't realize you guys have a retail space. Like, do you have brick and mortar? Or
yeah, that's where we are right now. Actually.
Okay. When did you take that on? Because that's like a huge
okay.
In the midst of a panic.
We were supposed to open in April of last year. We had to push that back until July was when we had our grand opening. So we just had over a year. But my parents literally came and looked at the space and they said, it's great. We see your vision. We know you can make this beautiful, but do not do this. And I was like, you guys, it's a small thing.
It's fine. It's one virus. It's fine.
It's fine. Everyone's kind of panicking, but it's fine. So, because we signed a lease in March. So it's just kind of.
Yeah.
But we're like, nah, it'll be fine. Which there's some days I'm like, whoa, I probably should have listened. But there's a lot of days that like this retail store really saved our ass. Like, I'm not even joking, which sounds nuts because this is a time that so many businesses are moving back to just online. But especially with this type of thing, pictures are great, but when you can come in and feel the furniture and sit down at it and look at it and see the quality, it's so different than like an online exposure. But then we had a weird struggle too that I didn't anticipate with people going to online. You have all these giant box retailers who can dump thousands of dollars into what their website is like and what their product line looks like. And they can have all these 360 videos, all of these things that small businesses can't afford to do, or honestly don't have the time to do those things. So then what started to build as some of a more online presence with our website, I feel like kind of dropped off, but the retail side picked up just a little bit. So yeah, we dove straight in at the worst time possible, but it has been a bright spot through all of this for us for sure. And honestly, it blows my mind every week when I walk in here and I'm like this is our space. Like all of this stuff in here it's just crazy to me to not really know what we're doing, flip a couple pallet signs on Marketplace, and then somehow have a space on one of the most historic streets in town. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I will say that for sure. that you're sitting there able to still have a smile on your face and not be in absolute tears at this moment.
Hey, call me tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Okay.
No, I'm overly positive all the time, and honestly stuff just rolls off my shoulder. It sounds like I don't care a lot about things, but whatever. But I'm always it's fine. It'll be good. It'll be fine. And Brittany's
Yeah, the pessimist for sure. Yeah.
But it's been great. Look at it.
I like to say I'm a realist.
Yes.
Others will say pessimist.
I totally get what you're saying. That's the reason, I don't really focus, I don't try to do online sales, at all. It's more okay, there's going to be a small, artist event, or, for a long time, quite a few years, I had stuff in an interior designer's showroom floor. And that worked out decently, but of course it was they got 30% commission off of the piece or whatever. So then you always have to price higher so that you're still making money off of it. But I did 100% believe it was yes, I can show all the pictures in the world online, and you have to stage it in a room so people can actually visualize what it would look like in their space and all of that. But I just don't have people buying furniture off online.
Yeah.
They might buy a bowl or something, small online, but they're not going to buy a giant coffee table.
Right. If they do, then they'll see the shipping price and get scared off. It's I think the bigger problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't found that clientele that's millionaires yet. I'm just dying to get on that crowd.
Please pass the numbers off if you do. I always hear about that. They're like, somebody will pay for it. Well, I can't find that somebody.
Hey makers. So today's podcast episode is sponsored in part by Alicia Van Osdal, who is the owner of Basil Blue Design Company. Alicia is a maker of all things, really. Her focus is on beautiful craftsmanship through woodworking, repurposing, refinishing, art, and sculpture. Her background includes 30 years of graphic design, logos, and branding. If you have an idea or concept and need a creative solution or graphic design, you can email Alicia directly at Alicia, and that is ALICIA @basilblue.com. Or you can visit her website at www.basilblue.com. And fun fact, Alicia actually designed the logo for Crafting Revolution. So that is an example of the impeccable work you can expect if that is something you are in the market for. So be sure to look up Alicia again at her website, basilblue.com. All right, let's get back into the action. So when you started with the flipping, did you have any previous woodworking experience?
For those of you just listening and not seeing Heather's face, her answer is absolutely not. She had zero.
I worked at a funeral home prior.
Yeah, she worked with kids and then at a funeral home, and just totally not building jobs. which I didn't either, you know.
Right.
But I have always been like an artistic, crafty person. And then my dad was patient enough to, he's the kind of guy that like, if something is broken in the house or the car, he's going to try to fix it himself. So he was a self-taught man in a lot of ways. And he would let me quote unquote help as a kid, which is mostly just getting in the way and slowing things down. But you know, he gave me a space to see power tools in use in a safe environment and to get familiar with them a little bit, because I think a lot of people, and especially women, would say, you know, power tools can be very overwhelming at first. I mean, there are still days that I'm on the table saw 100% sure I'm cutting all my fingers off that day. You know, like they're just intimidating.
Yep.
So I had helped him, and we did a couple projects, like we built a chicken coop. That sounds so country, but that was the biggest thing that we built. So I had some basic knowledge, but I finally admitted this year. But
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just learned this year.
I, at the beginning, just
Fronted?
I fronted. I dumped out confidence to Heather. You know, I was just like, oh yeah, we got these tools, no problem. We just need to go to Target, buy it, plug it in. We're gonna know exactly what to do. It'll be fine.
Okay.
On the inside, I'm like, man, I really hope I know what I'm doing, because I'm gonna be in trouble if not. But we just kind of built our skills as we built new projects or had new customers asking for something. But yeah, it was very timid at first.
But now we teach classes and teach other women how to use tools. So.
Yes, which is so exciting when you see like, I have so many great pictures of women with a brad nailer, and they first pop and they look over and they're just, you know, pumped, because like, oh, that was so powerful. I can't believe I just did that.
That way you could say
It's empowering. Yeah, it's very empowering.
Yeah, that's I just had a presentation for a online thing that I called Power Tool Empowerment, because I very much feel like power tools empower women. And that's some of the best memories I have with my daughter so far, is like we recited like the playhouse at her, you know, preschool, and she's there with the like cedar siding and with the nail gun, you know, and I'm standing there helping her, but she helped nail most of those boards up there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then using like the chisel out, you know, to get bark off in the workshop and stuff. So right now the working theory is to be a woodworking pop star, is what she plans to grow up to be.
I love it.
Solid.
I love it.
Exactly. But it's fun to watch. How'd you guys have you been doing classes before the space?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we started off, it really was kind of a marketing thing for us. We wanted to have a way to get out there and get our name out there, and then hopefully be able to transfer that into a future sale. But we also just, like we've talked about several times now, like creating is a very empowering, but also a very healing thing. And we want that out in our community as much as possible. But we still do, but we host some classes here now, but we partner with other venues. We've done local ones, but we've traveled some to do. But I love when we're able to go to bars or restaurants or places like that, another venue. That way you're supporting two businesses at one time. And you get to mix up your clients that are coming in. It's just really kind of a fun way to get people familiar with two places at one time. And, you know, maybe it's your favorite bar you go to all the time, but they don't always have it where you can build your own beer caddy at that bar, you know. So that's how we did a lot of our classes before the pandemic and before we had the store here.
Okay. Did the people coming through those classes, has it been like are you targeting only women, or have you had like a mix of genders coming through?
We haven't intentionally targeted women,
Right.
but
We've had a pretty good mix too.
I would say it's still
Date night mixes.
mostly women. Yeah. Some of the classes we try to gear a little bit more towards like a couple or family oriented. But I do think kind of our target audience in general with what we make and our platform tends to be women. So I think a lot of our customers just from that aspect, but also I think that women are more comfortable coming to a class ran by other females, because there's not this fear that like we're going to judge you or look down on you, because we've been in the exact same spot where we were just as scared to use that tool. And I'm not saying that all guys would be that way in any way at all, but I think that it's just a little bit more comfort level of like, okay, you've probably been in my shoes, like to a true extent.
I think there's something to it too. And this is something like I was personally like really thinking on in preparation for that presentation I gave. Like I kind of told my journey or my story into making. And when I first started, I was in college and there, I had access to a shop space, which is always amazing when you have access to an industrial shop space.
Oh yeah.
But the very first project I did, I made something for my little sisters, and it was the shop manager. Yeah, he would show me how to use the tools and then have me use it. But in the end, he made that more than I did. Because I think I was more okay being like, I'm really intimidated by this and you're the man. And so you can go ahead and like do this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it makes you a little more passive about it.
It makes you, and it's a dynamic I've watched because in my job, I go into manufacturers all over the state of Iowa, and I do trainings, and I'll have, a mix of genders in the class. And I've been in situations in classes where there will be like 9 women and 1 man. And I watch as the man walks into the room, every woman there gives her power over to him. Like it's just like how we're like raised, right? And so so they let him talk more. They let him, they look to him to see what he's going to say before they speak, even though I'm like, you all are powerful women who have powerful jobs in this room.
Yeah.
Every single one of you. And it's just something like, I don't necessarily speak to it, in those spaces, but it's something I notice and that I see. And I've noticed even in myself, I notice it enough that now I tend to go the other way. And now I find myself like, if I'm in a maker space and there's men and women, I will almost go out of my way not to talk to a man. I will almost like to not even acknowledge he's there. And that's not anything to say about him, right? He could be like a really great, nice guy, but it's more about like, I've had to recognize that in myself to be like, I almost have to ignore the fact that there's a man here, because otherwise I'm still going to defer to him, which is insane.
I was going to say, it's true though. I mean, as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, I can think of myself doing that in similar situations. Like for example, when like we got a flat tire and her dad came to help us out, my first default was he was going to do the whole thing. He had me do it, which was great and empowering. But my immediate default was that the man help. So it kind of makes some sense. But
I thought you were talking about the other time where I flagged somebody down inside the highway.
Oh my gosh. Okay. If you want just a really random funny story, we had 2 flat tires in like 3 weeks. It was stupid. I don't know, bad luck that month. Flat tire, the jack was broke, because I was like, well, if we can just try and get it off. But I was like, I don't know if I can get the lug nuts tight enough. But there was like a Walmart pretty close. Wasn't working out, so I'm getting frustrated. Heather literally is like, I'm just gonna get this tire out and I'm gonna sit in the back of the car and someone will come. So she's just sitting in the back of the car. I'm sitting in the front so nobody can see me. You just see this one girl with a tire rolling back and forth. We had 10 guys stop in less than 5 minutes. Immediately.
Free tire chains.
But yeah, it is just.
It makes up for the amount of times I've been mansplained something. Or what project are you working on today, girls? In Lowe's.
Yes. No, I totally get that. I look way too butch for guys to ever stop anymore. So
I'm by myself. Yeah, like Heather's around me.
I mean, I'm going to be honest about this. The fact is, I clearly read.
I know my strengths and weaknesses. Okay.
I knew it. When we were getting the tire fixed, I needed to be out of the vision. I needed to be hidden away in the front seat. She needed to be out back.
But so I was curious, about who comes through. And I think it is like, even when you talk about couples, it would be interesting. I'm one of those weird people who like just really loves to be the fly on the wall and observe human behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And so it would be interesting to me to see in those situations how many times, if it's a heterosexual couple, does the woman defer to her husband to actually, you know, do the building in those classes. Do you do any all female? Like, have you done like intentionally done any all female classes?
We had a couple Mother's Day
Um,
ones that we did, but besides that, we didn't have any intentional ones, but we have had several classes that were all women. And I'm thinking back about the couples, and I feel like a lot of the heterosexual couples did have the female did most of like the paint and stain, and then the guy finished it out. But yeah, the classes, I mean, I think sometimes I fear if I over target women, that makes me look like we're opposed to men, if that makes sense, which is silly for me to have to think that that would be a problem to begin with, you know?
Again, I have to say that's insane.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so threaded in our DNA, and it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like the three of us here are obviously like power women. Like we don't necessarily need a man in our lives. I mean, our dads have saved us a few times, I'll be honest, but that's what dads are for. But we are three empowered women who are still have these moments where you default back to what culture's kind of brought us up.
No,
to.
I mean, too. I'm not a part of this. They don't call me heartless ever for no reason.
Heather is much more evolved than us.
I had a very independent mother. Let's say that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Honestly, my parents are still married. They've been married for 32 years. She's just always, don't take shit from anybody. Do what you want to do despite what's going to happen. You're going to learn one way or another kind of person.
Yeah, I could see it. Now, I had the other important question I have to ask for the classes is, you said you started as a marketing ploy to try to convert to a sale. Has it worked?
Yes.
Yes. It worked.
Yes.
I actually had somebody who was kind of like a mentor, a female business owner, tell me that that's the one reason she does classes, is because she says either you win either way. Either you get people to come and they feel empowered to make it themselves, which is amazing, an amazing feeling, or they realize how hard it is to actually make that thing, and now they're willing to pay your price.
Yes, that's true. We have had some people that they've been like, okay, you finish it out. I'm just going to tell everybody I did it. And I'm like, go for it. Especially tell your husband.
Know.
We're always like, secret will not leave here.
They're
But
also
no.
like in their 50s or 60s.
But yeah, I mean, it's a win. Like you were just saying, it is a win all around. I mean, obviously you're getting paid for that class, so there's something there. And then the empowering aspect is phenomenal. But I think in a lot of ways, we really need it. There are a ton of woodworking people, quote unquote, businesses in this area. It's Midwest through and through, it's a very just hands-on type community. And a lot of people who have honestly around the same skill set that we have, maybe not quite as a skill set, maybe not be able to pull it off and have the same aesthetic overall, but the basic skills are the same. So we really needed to stand out aside from all the other people who were also building in their garage 2 doors down. So it was a great way for people to get to know us and actually see more than just, our logo on Facebook or something like that. So I think that was a huge part in helping transition from coming to a class to participate to an actual customer. And then it also was a way for people to see kind of our skill level firsthand and to know that build a little bit of trust and rapport in that sense. And then it's been great whenever we can host it here in the store, obviously, because you have to come in here and look at all of our products at the same time. There's times you have to wait for paint to dry, so that works out perfectly. But I think a lot of it really is just getting people to know us and know that, like,
we're more than just an image on the screen, and here's our, our personalities, take it or leave it. 'Cause it's kind of how we are. Either love us or.
Well, and
hate us or
honestly, a
judge.
lot of people, whenever they show up to classes, they don't know that we build all this. They're like, oh, where are your husbands? And we're like,
Yeah, those are my favorite. I can't. There's many times we have delivered furniture and they'll say, "Oh, your husband did a great job. Thank you for delivering." I'll be like,
you're welcome.
"You think I'm just delivering for a husband?
Yeah.
Come on." Jeez, it's crazy, but yeah, that kind of stuff. Don't even get me started on that. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It drives me nuts.
Okay, there's so many ways I could take that, but
Let's do it.
well, my one thought is, I mean, the Midwest is not super progressive.
We're a little lagging.
Yeah, we'll just make that it's a fact.
Yes.
It's a fact.
So that puts you in a position, a lot of, I would say people outside of the queer community may not understand this, but it puts you in a position to continuously have to come out.
Yes. Pretty
Over
much.
and over and over and over and over again.
Yes. We didn't come out in our business for the first 2 years for fear of losing
Mhm.
people.
And I mean, there's still, I hate to say this, but there's still times that we aren't forthcoming about it.
Oh, yeah, you don't
I'd
tell
say.
certain people.
I mean, just because we do have a lot of like older females by chance that are like in their 60s, 70s that will come through. But I mean, we have literally lost customers because they realized that we weren't sisters. I mean, that has happened, and we have seen the shock on people's faces. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a good amount of people who don't mind, doesn't matter to them, they'll
Right.
never think about me, which is fantastic. Those are my favorite kind. But there are people who they'll be like, and how do you guys know each other? And you're like, oh, this is my wife. And you watch their face as
Yeah.
it's all processing through. And then they're like, okay, thank you, bye. Like they're nice to you or whatever, but you can tell that was something that they didn't like or didn't agree with. But it's a weird thing because it's such a personal thing to share with someone.
Yep.
And especially in the Midwest. I mean, I say all the time, like, we are the belt buckle of the Bible Belt is how I feel. It is just a very conservative area. But then I think that's helped me personally grow as a lesbian and to be comfortable with who I am and to realize, like, those aren't the customers I want anyway. I don't want you to have a piece of my heart, because every piece of furniture that leaves our store like has a piece of us in there. It's so much more than just a business. Like, that is our creative thoughts and our energy, and our emotions are put into that. And I don't want my stuff like that going to customers who don't at least understand and accept where we are. And you don't have to totally be fine with this lifestyle, but it is very interesting. It's a whole side of business I didn't really think about having to deal with until we were right in the middle of it.
Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodworker on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also, great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action.
That's not something that is really talked about on online courses for one-on-one business. They're not like, here's what you do if you're gay in the Midwest, But to be honest with you,
I haven't had, I was not out on social media, probably same for about the first 2 years, probably, be out of fear, right? I didn't want the trolls coming after me or any of that. I'm like, I don't need any of that. And I think maybe I had I had an easier time of that because my wife's not a part of like the making part of it or any, she's more like the moral support behind the scenes type thing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to, like, it wasn't necessarily like having to explain who's that other person, like in the
Right.
pictures or in the videos or any of that. But I feel it in my job all the time, because I'm going into predominantly male spaces, heavily predominantly conservative, wink wink spaces, and those are not safe spaces, right? And so I'll talk about my family, I'll talk about my kids, and usually if the question comes up, what does your husband do, it's still a 50-50 chance that I won't correct them, that I'll just change the pronoun.
Which is awful because you should
Yes.
be able to just.
I should be able to just talk and say my wife, without having to check on what that space is going to be like. And I recently, like last week I did like an intro video type reel on Instagram, and I thought that there wouldn't be any issue because I've shared now for 3 years. I share pictures of my family and everything like that, talk about my life and stories. It says queer with a rainbow flag right on my bio, like it's all there. But I mentioned 2 things, queer and social justice advocate, in my little intro of facts there, and I lost over 100 followers just like that.
Anytime we post anything that has to do with the gay community, every single time we will lose followers. We just posted a flag on Instagram that we did for the Flag Springfield organization here. I think we lost like 18 followers that day, which not close to 100. That's crazy, but it's nuts whenever you see that kind of thing happen. And it's just.
You say that, but people have openly said rude things to us about being gay.
I know, but it's just crazy to think about the problems that we have to encounter and deal with as business women that so many businessmen never have to think about, and so many business women don't
catch this. This guy was like, we delivered his furniture and then he realized that we were gay. And he's like, you guys should be thanking me and consider lucky that a Christian man let you into his home.
And then he tried to buy more furniture.
No.
No, thank you, sir.
No, thank you, sir.
But stuff like that, I'm not saying we are the most discriminated on population, because there's discrimination on so many different levels that we do not have to experience or go through. But there is a lot more fight, I think, that our community has to go through, and these problems that arise. Heather is a real roll it off your shoulder kind of person. I am not. I take everything super personal. Like, you don't like the stain choice on the table that you chose, it's somehow my fault, and I feel like I'm a piece of crap. Like, that's just me. So those moments though with customers like that hits me heavy, like and hard, and it's just, it adds a whole nother layer of difficulty to the business when you're already in the middle of a pandemic, stressed out. Shipping that's lost, and who even knows where. You got, projects you're trying to finish, things you're trying to schedule, a kid that we're trying to get home and get fed, and all these things that are just normal life that's already heavy enough. And then you have to bring in this work aspect that's, like I said, difficult on the business, but that also carries home with you on some level. And it's just, it's something you can't really prep for.
To your point, like the losing followers at the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't want them anyways. Like, if they were, if they're bothered by that, I don't want them following me anyways. In some regard, I will say in the other regard, I do fully believe that exposure to people who are different than yourself allows you to open
Yes.
yourself to be more accepting of.
Yeah, it's like kind of a hard personal struggle because like personally you're like, I don't care, whatever.
Right.
But then business wise, you're like, I need those followers though. So it gets out further and further to
Right.
people who are different than us.
Right.
And like you're saying, it's real easy to want to go and hit that block button. The customer that she just referred to, actually, we just had another encounter with like 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And my initial response was, I want to just block him and never talk to him again. But then after I settled for a while, I was like, no, he needs to see these kind of posts, because if I block him and his feed just becomes more and more and more and more conservative, that's not helping anybody at all. So, I mean, is it difficult to see those things and to try to engage in those conversations in a respectful way? That's not something I signed up for whenever we decided to open a business. But at the same time, it's those small moments where you can choose, kind of like you're saying, to be a social justice advocate and to advocate for someone, even in a really small way, just by not shutting down and not being like, it's easy to look at the algorithm and the numbers and say, okay, I shouldn't post this kind of content.
Yeah.
But our reaction needs to be the opposite. We probably should post it more, you know?
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, that exposure is huge.
Yeah.
It was nice. We on the topic of discrimination, we had a news article come out last week, but this guy like blew it up and he was like, you need to go to church because you're gay and find God. And people like had our back. Like, I feel like the Springfield community like low-key attacked him and they were like, no, you're being bigoted, you're being discriminatory, like get out of here, like how dare you attack a business that's just trying to. So that was nice to see that a community that is in the Bible Belt actually like came around and supported us when they didn't have to.
Yeah, feeling very vulnerable and exposed, I guess is how I would say that morning. I mean, the news article came out like that evening, so went to bed. I'm waking up expecting there to be a bunch of positive notifications, and my entire phone was filled with this one guy leaving like 12 comments. And it immediately started to take away from it all. But like you said, that's where you have to choose to look at the positive of it. Like you have to choose to look at the community who stepped up and to put more weight on that than this one person's response, because these 12 people stepped up and did, you know, so I think that's just so hard to balance out. It takes so much positive to balance out one negative thing. But at the same time, I think a lot of those people are people who have gotten to know us personally. And I think we've seen customers before that were more reserved once they knew that we were gay, but then as they got to know us as individuals and just as people and not just seen as like these gay business owners, I feel like that has opened up and allowed for more acceptance from those people. Just because sometimes there is that, I mean, that's what discrimination is that initial blocking off and assuming you're labeled this way. But once you just realize, I mean, we're just people. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't know why you care who I sleep with, you know, we're just human beings.
Well, I once had an ex-girlfriend of mine say that the reason you get that reaction is because at least in our case, right? You say, this is my girlfriend or my wife or whatever. They initially go to seeing two vaginas in front of them. Like they initially go to like what you do in the bedroom. When it's like, I see a heterosexual couple, I'm not sitting there pontificating
Never.
what they're doing in the bedroom.
Never, right.
Right? Like that's not where my head goes.
Right.
And so it comes down to like, they have to like get past that initial, like, for whatever reason, the thought of like, what do you do in the bedroom to like, oh, you go to the grocery store like me.
Right.
You go pick up your kid from school like me.
I walk on 2 feet like you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, and that's why I'm saying like, you need to have that more exposure. Like, and it's good that you can become that. It's hard to be that face though. I 1000% understand that it's hard to be that face. And I do want to acknowledge though, like I've stated on the podcast before, we're still all three white women who identify as women. And so we do still have some amount of privilege above others.
Yes.
And we still have the choice to pass if we want to, if we feel like our safety's in need. Unlike, you know, if our skin color is a different color, you can't change that.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That's so
You
true.
know, you can't hide that. So I do want to acknowledge, like, we do have a certain level of privilege. And it sounds like both of us took that, at least for a couple of years into our business, of
Yes.
not making it known. You know, but hopefully by more of us being out there making the more courageous choice, I guess, of being known, that others can feel safer to follow too. And we can help weed out some of the people that leave those oh so wonderful comments.
Yeah.
For real though.
But I mean, that is all we can do. I don't anticipate that all of a sudden everybody's just going to be totally fine with gays and it'll be peace and blessings from here on out, you know.
Right.
But I hope that we can at least, you know, maybe there is that 15-year-old girl who is at home and she's listening to this podcast and she's thought about owning a business, but she was scared about discrimination. You know, if there can be 1 second of hope for someone else who's coming up behind us, then it makes it worth all those punches we take from being the face for a minute. You know what I mean? Which honestly, I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, even you, I feel like you're more courageous than we are. I also say that point blank. There are still times, like I said, that we kind of hide behind that veil, and that's where we need to
Some
step up a
posts
little
are
bit.
Instagram approvable, but not Facebook approvable.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yep.
Um,
I
Moving
understand
on.
that. I just don't interact with Facebook anymore. So I will say you're fake braver on that than me. I just like, nope, I'm cutting that off.
Facebook is our lifeblood. So
Yeah,
we're threaded in it.
Marketplace has been wonders for us here.
But there are times that, well, I was gonna say my personal feelings about Facebook, like my personal
Yeah.
feed and stuff, is entirely different than like
Yes.
business. You know what I mean? Because
That's
business wise is a whole nother world that's operating within this very crazy culture that exists online, because there are just so many opinions. I think that's my thing. People are so opinionated about everything, which is great, but to take the time and spew it out there all the time, it's gotten a little out of hand, I think, on some of our social media platforms, where everyone has their own loud opinion that must be the one and only true right way. But hopefully those conversations can spark up something positive in there at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's been maybe going on 2 years now that I took, no, I guess just a year. I took Facebook off my phone because it was just not good for my mental health.
Right.
And I have some family members that it's like, I still want to be able to talk to you in person. So I need to not see what you post.
What they post.
Yes. I just need to not see it. Sometimes ignorance is absolute bliss.
Yes.
Yes.
So we are getting close to end of time, but I want to pick up on something you mentioned a couple times. So you guys started fostering, which that sounds exciting. Also nerve-wracking. I know
Yes.
becoming new parents is always nerve-wracking. How has that been, like, getting that in with the business and stuff?
Oh, a shit show at first, for sure. I mean, we're what, on month 4 months of fostering now, a 5-year-old boy. So like I said before, I mean, I'm not joking when I'm saying we were working 100 hours in the shop. I mean, we really were, and that does not work with a 5-year-old. Point blank, it just doesn't. And we want to give him way more attention than working that much anyway. So we really went from having this baby that was our business for 5 years to now we have another, quote unquote baby that's coming into our life that needs just as much, if not more, of our focus and time. So it was
insane at first. We're lucky that we got to transition, like having him on the weekends for a couple months. That helped us kind of get a balance together. But I think the biggest thing is, for me anyway, is it has been very grounding and very hopeful at the same time. You know, this past year has been a lot of dark and heavy, continual adapting and changing that gets exhausting. And there are days that, you know, I'm like, okay, it was worth our whole day that we just went through was worth being able to take him to Jump Mania so he could jump around on inflatables and have the time of his life. Everything that we went through today, all of the hard work, all of the, you know, maybe negative things are worth it for those moments that we get to have as a family. So it's still an adjustment period for us as we're trying to find that balance, but because it's hard to put 100% of yourself into two things. I'm not sure that that's possible, but we're definitely trying our best. But it has been insane. It's been insane. I mean, just like the energy level and the nonstop talking, just all those, you know, small mom things that I'm trying to get used to. And we're coaching a soccer team right now, which is an absolute disaster. So all the time I have to remind myself, like, we have a 5-year-old, but really, like, we've only been parents for 4 months. Like, we're new at this.
Yes.
But, you know, it's starting to come together.
Yeah, I don't. I chuckle at the nonstop talking because our youngest is well, she'll be 6 in January, but still, she's like, you know, that age. And we just got back from 5-day vacation. We went to Lake Michigan, which was amazing, and spent like days on the beach, and the kids loved it and everything.
I wanted to go up there. It looks gorgeous.
It's so nice. I'll send you a link to the Airbnb. It was but like she was just, especially when she gets like one-on-one time with just one adult, like literally nonstop talking. And I am a person who can go an entire day without talking to another individual.
Yep, me right here. Yep.
And so sometimes I'm just
silence is great.
I'm like, I love you, but please just
I'm pretty sure that he has ADD because we'll just spitball off of each other and we'll be like, okay, let's talk about unicorns now. But what about that baseball? Did you see the football in the backyard?
No, I am not a multitasker. I do not have ADHD. She is to an extreme. So we'll literally be in the car. I'm trying to tell Heather something. T's talking in the background about something. Heather is responding to what Taylor said and then replying to what I said. And I'm just trying to figure out who's even talking right now. That's how my brain feels. Like, I can't keep up with it. And there are times where I'm like, okay, I need 5 minutes for me right now. I'm going to go sit in silence in the bedroom. You know, there are lots of mom breaks that happen, which I think is important for him to see that side too, that, you know, as adults, sometimes we get a little overwhelmed and flustered, but
that's why I say my favorite time is Monday morning, dropping the kids off to school, and I sit in the van for like 5 minutes and I just stare.
Yes.
Like dead silence.
Like recuperate from the weekend.
It's like, oh, okay, finally, here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
No, for real. Yeah. That, I feel like we prepared ourselves for a lot of things. I did not prepare myself for the constant amount of talking, but yeah,
I should have prepared you for that.
You warmed me up, that's for sure, with your, I mean, she wakes up and I wake up, it takes me like an hour to wake up and she is off about like, we got to do this. I'm like, I still have crusties in my eyes. I'm trying to figure it out.
I hear that 10,000%.
We are very similar then.
I also feel like you're ratting out your wife in some way right now. I feel like her and I would get along.
She doesn't sleep like a lot. Just about her.
Yes. She's maybe not quite as, but she's an early riser too. And so she's up like an hour and a half before me, has like her whole like 2 cups of coffee. And so I wake up and she's like, yeah, basically like, and I'm like,
let's go.
Stop talking.
I need 45 minutes at least for this to restart up here in my head.
That's right.
I'm like an old 1980s computer trying to reboot. That's how I feel.
All right, ladies. Well, It's been amazing talking to you. I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can find you and see all the great things you're doing.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us on. It was an absolute blast, and it was good to get to know you a little bit better as well. If you want to find us, you can check us out on Facebook if you don't have it off your phone like yourself. Instagram, Pinterest, and then we have our own website at beautifulfightwoodworking.com. So Beautiful Fight Woodworking is the tag you use on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. And those will be linked in the show notes so everybody can find that easily. And yeah, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so again, that was Brittany and Heather of Beautiful Fight Woodworking. I'll include the links on how you can follow along with them and see all the great things that they're up to in the show notes. Best places to find that is in the description for this week's episode, right in your podcast app. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, check out the description down below. And then you can head on over to my website, freemanfurnishings.com/podcast. And you can find today's episode in addition to all the previous episodes, along with the links to follow along with everybody. Also, make sure to follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. That's my cat, Blaze, interrupting. At Crafting a Revolution over there. And you will see that I keep you posted on who's been on the podcast, as well as the links in the bio there to go watch and listen and all that fine stuff. A note that I recently got my block from Alma Pink Soul Studios. She generated the block for me to be able to do block printing shirts for the podcast with the new logo and stuff. So if that is something you are interested in, you can message me at Crafting a Revolution on Instagram or at Freeman Furnishings on Instagram. Either place you can find me, send me a direct message and let me know you want a shirt. I've got a limited quantity, so you will want to get on it. And by limited, I mean I've got like 20 of various sizes. All right, so when I am not making podcast episodes, you can find me designing, making, power carving, furniture, and other home decor over at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings across pretty much all the social media platforms. I'm active, most active though, over on Instagram and TikTok at Freeman Furnishings, and sometimes over on YouTube as well. So go check those out, say hi, follow along, make sure you hit the bell on all of those things. All that fun stuff. All right, so it is halfway through the week. I hope you're having a great week so far. And as always, let's go craft a revolution.
She, her, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic